Cortado? Is that like a coffee?
This is a question that launches 1,000 problems in South Park. Well, it's really just one problem, but it manifests in 1,000 different ways. That problem is gentrification, and all of the distortions it causes in the real estate market and in the quality of people's lives. That is the main point of Season 25's City People. South Park explains gentrification, roasts the real estate agents and gentrifiers, and then gives us one more reason to hate Cartman. But first, the gentrification. What causes gentrification? What are the perceived benefits? What are the downsides? And what can we do about it apart from all the pointless protesting and complaining? City People gives us a pretty good reason for gentrification.
You can get 4 times the house here that you can get in the city.
It's a painfully obvious reason, but it's just a surface reason. We will get into the deeper reason as to why gentrification is a problem it is. But let's just follow the story for a minute. City people are moving into South Park and the real estate market is getting hot. Leanne Cartman's rent is going up, so she finds herself a new job as a real estate agent. It's a very difficult job.
You have to get your picture taken.
That's it. Well, there is a little more, but it's not much.
And then act like you like those people when you show them houses.
Long story short, Leanne gets the job.
Well, then I'm gonna give you a shot, Mrs. Cartman. For your little boy.
Which is a big mistake. You see, there's one person she forgot to ask.
I got a job, Eric.
I'm your job.
Leanne explains that she needs the job to pay their bills, and Cartman responds by asking,
What job could you possibly have? You don't know how to do anything!
Like the good little boy he is, Cartman decides to help his mother by sabotaging her career.
If my mom can be a real estate agent, then literally anyone in the world can.
So Cartman becomes a real estate agent. He puts on his fake smile, crosses his arms, leans as far back as he can, and snaps a picture.
I won't forget this when I'm rich.
That brings us to the gentrifiers. As a stand-in, South Park uses City People. These are the yuppie millennials who have a very deep philosophical calculations about MacBooks and LaCroix. Just listen to them.
Oh, Cortado? Cortado. Oh, bottled water.
Wi-Fi?
Metal bottled water.
South Park also shows us how gentrification gets a pass in the first place. It tends to be supported by the ruling class. In South Park's case, that is the mayor and the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, I just love all these city people moving in.
For the business people, this makes perfect sense.
My bakery has seen a 20% increase in sales.
But what is the cost of all this? Mr. Kim explains with an amazing dialogue filled with puns. It's actually unintentional because he is praising the city people, but his accent makes the whole thing hilarious.
These shitty people have a shitty way of doing things that will expose us all to their shitty ideas.
But money is not the only reason why the ruling class tend to encourage gentrification. There is a more insidious reason beneath it all. And in the privacy of the council chamber, Mayor McDaniel says it out loud.
I've always dreamed of South Park becoming more than a little hick town.
That's right, good old social engineering. It never really went away. A scary number of people in the ruling class believe they're better than you, and believe they should decide how you live. When you look at unpopular policies, they always come from politicians who think the average person is too stupid to tell right from wrong, which they take to mean they should make the decisions for us. That's how you end up with governments that regulate every little thing, including stuff like the color of your door and the height of your lawn. Naturally, these politicians think that cultured city people moving into a little town like South Park is a plus. The cruel irony of this kind of thinking is that a lot of the stuff that passes for high culture in our society just tends to be overpriced garbage. It's not better, it's just old-fashioned snobbery with modern characteristics. One would imagine that being enlightened would make you immune to spending ridiculous amounts of money on stupid stuff just to show that you're better than poor people, but the world is quite a funny place. The richest and allegedly most enlightened among us tend to be the very people who are obsessed with wasting money just to flex on the poors. The rich members of this crowd will spend millions of dollars on a blank canvas masquerading as a painting, while the middle-class wannabes will waste good money on tap water in a can. South Park just roasts the hell out of these snobs with the way it portrays these city people. They only talk about LaCroix, Cortados, MacBooks, and of course, their Teslas.
We have a Tesla. My son left his MacBook in the Tesla.
These are also snooty snobs making your neighborhood unaffordable. They're not better than you or smarter than you. They're just brainless sheep with money to waste. In their attempts to look unique, they turn themselves into boring carbon copies of each other. But because South Park's ruling class itself is made up of snooty snobs with zero self-awareness, this whole tragedy is lost on them. They keep encouraging city people to move in and improve their town.
Here's to the future, everyone!
The future!
And what a dark future it is.
Wi-Fi. LaCroix.
Oat milk. Oat milk.
Now, city people are gentrifying South Park because they're attracted by the lower home prices. But as more of them pour in, those home prices go higher. This begs two questions: how and why? Let's start with the simpler of the two questions, the how. When Carmen shows the city people Tweek's house, Tweek's family doesn't even want to sell.
Our house isn't for sale. Hey!
But they just haven't heard the offer.
I think I can get you $4 million for this place.
$4 million? Really?
Now, $4 million can only get you a box under a bridge in LA and an air mattress in New York, but the rest of the country, the average price of a home is about $400,000. Given that South Park is a small and fairly rural town, the average price of a home here is probably even lower. We see pre-bubble prices ranging from $170K to $350K. Now, they're 10 times higher. This is how the real estate bubbles happen. A few guys with too much money move into a town and offer crazy prices for otherwise average homes. And then when Bob hears that his neighbor Billy got $4 million for his house, he's not going to sell his own house for $1 less. He's going to reject all fair offers from regular buyers and hold out for the big money offers. Then Jim hears that Bob got $4.1 million for his house, so he holds out for $4.2, and then Steve holds out for $4.3, and round it goes. But I think you could spot the problem by now. Why do we let things get this crazy in the first place? Now, the reason why houses get so expensive in South Park's bubble is pretty obvious when you just watch the episode. There are all these city people moving into South Park, but nobody is building any new houses. The city people are just bidding up prices for the existing stock of houses, and prices keep going up and up and up because there's nothing to replace them. This wouldn't happen in any other market. If there were only 10 apples left in the world, and you were the only person who had them, you could theoretically force all the people who wanted to get an apple to get into a bidding war and probably sell each apple for like $1 billion or something. But that would never happen because in the free market, other people would start growing apples and soon there would be 100 million apples in the world. This supply would bring down the prices of apples to normal levels. It's simple supply and demand. It happens in the market for literally every product, except for housing. The reason is because of a conspiracy. We can't really build new homes because a long time ago, rich people decided that they don't want to live near poor people. Southerners just enforced racial segregation, but Northerners decided to be a little sneaky. They invented zoning laws. These laws, mostly made in the early 1900s, deliberately made houses in certain neighborhoods too expensive for undesirable races to afford at the time. The undesirables at the time were people of color, Italians, and the Irish. 100 years later, the Irish are considered white, and the racism against people of color has decreased significantly, but those houses haven't gotten any cheaper. This is because we realized racism was stupid and replaced it with an even stupider practice, classism. Why hate poor people from one race when you can hate poor people from all races equally? One result of this classism is that 75% of all residential land in America is zoned for single-family houses only. In a state like California, single-family zoning eats up 82% of residential land. In desirable places like Atherton, which is a suburb of San Francisco, 100% of the land is zoned for single-family homes. The minimum lot size in Atherton is one of the highest in the country, around an acre. So one building per acre. The planning laws in Atherton make it effectively illegal for poor people to live there because the only home you can build in a place like that is a mansion. Unsurprisingly, Atherton has an average home value of $7.5 million. Go to any major city in America and you will find zoning laws that make building new homes very difficult anywhere that isn't in the literal sticks. As cities have grown, all the houses in the desirable neighborhoods have been snapped up. Single-family zoning, building codes, and good old neighborhood preservation laws have been weaponized by both real estate lobby and NIMBYs to prevent anybody from building any new houses. The situation has gotten so bad that in the first 6 months of 2024, San Francisco, a city of 800,000, with a metro area of nearly 8 million people, only approved 16 new houses. That's not 16 apartment blocks that can house 1,000 people each. No, it's just 16 housing units total. 16 houses for 16 people in an area with 8 million people. If you ever wondered why San Francisco has such a bad homeless problem, there's your answer. But the homeless are just the most visible victims. There are way more people who are spending most of their paychecks on rent. The math is very brutal, but very profitable. If no one builds any new houses, then the existing houses can keep doubling in value. This is a great deal for the boomer homeowners and the real estate investors who bought their home for $11 back in 1969. But it's a terrible deal for everybody else because as home prices keep going up, the possibility of owning one becomes increasingly impossible. San Francisco just happens to be the most extreme example of this. The rest of the country is experiencing more or less the same problem on a slightly smaller scale. We're not building enough houses because NIMBYs and real estate types use existing laws to block any new construction so they can preserve their property values, and everybody else suffers. Well, not everybody. Apart from homeowners, there is a group that benefits a lot from this messed up system. Now, the shortage of new housing doesn't stop the housing market. Everybody still needs a house. In a fair market, that wouldn't be stupid. You would have a construction company competing with other construction companies to build as many houses as possible. Instead, we have house flippers repainting old houses and real estate agents competing to sell them. South Park roasts both folks and city people and white people renovating homes.
What we're thinking is to take out the wall between the kitchen and living room for a more open concept.
With another client, Randy gives very different advice.
What we're thinking is to take out this wall between your kitchen and your living room to give you a more open concept with...
And when Randy meets a third client, his advice fails.
I can't take out the wall between my living room and my kitchen. It's a load-bearing wall.
This is a very harsh critique of the whole house flipping industry. Make a few cosmetic changes and jack up the price by 30%. Nevertheless, South Park reserves the harshest criticism for real estate agents. Nothing is off limits. From their petty obsessions with image to their fake smiles, in the way they sit with their arms crossed and lean back when taking a picture. And then there is the way they talk in their gratingly fancy language.
This is a 2,300 square foot mid-colonial home, detached garage.
What the hell is a mid-colonial? I don't know either. It sounds fancy, but when you look at it, it's just a generic suburban home. And the detached garage thing, it's just a shed. But that's the point. South Park shows how real estate agents exaggerate everything. Generic suburban home with a shed you can park your car in doesn't sound so fancy. But a mid-colonial home with a detached garage? Well, that sounds like something you could sell for...
Now listing for just $3.5 million.
Just $3.5 million. I think we hear the word so often that we forget what a crazy amount of money $3.5 million actually is. But once again, that's the point. Real estate agents deliberately use words like just and only to make you forget how crazy the figures they're throwing around actually are. This is also part of a manipulation tactic called anchoring. Basically, they show you a couple of $3 million homes, and then they show you a $900,000 home. The $900,000 home seems cheap in comparison to the others. It makes you feel like you're getting a good deal, but it's still a crazy number. It just doesn't feel like that because your brain is comparing it to the $3 million houses they just showed you. That's how anchoring works. You're still getting scammed, you're just not aware of it yet. As recently as the 1970s, you could buy the average home in America for $17,000. An average working man could buy a house with 2 years of income. Today, that average house sells for $400,000, and the average American needs 7 years of income to afford it. And that's assuming you don't live in a city where you have to compete with the out-of-towners for a house in the first place. And this is a serious problem. Now, we have discussed how and why out-of-towners gentrify neighborhoods and entire cities. In South Park, those gentrifiers were city people. But what about our world? Where do the gentrifiers come from? Your town's version of city people may be a giant investment firm like Blackstone. They usually swoop in and outbid regular home buyers. They also tend to buy up entire neighborhoods and then turn around and rent them out. The second group of culprits are foreign millionaires and billionaires. If you're a rich guy in a place like China, Russia, Saudi, or any of the other oppressive places in the world, the government can seize your assets at any time for saying the wrong thing to the wrong person. So, for a lot of these rich people in these countries, the first order of business is taking on as much money as they can out of their home country and parking it in a country with stronger property rights, usually in Europe, America, and Australia. Even in countries with good property rights like India, the rich tend to own property abroad, either to hedge their bets or just as a status symbol. Then there are the tax refugees. Super rich folks from high-tax countries like Norway tend to relocate to lower-tax jurisdictions. America sees the same tax refugee thing internally, with people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos relocating from high-tax California and Washington to low-tax Texas and Florida. People like Elon also tend to bring a lot of their employees with them when they move. So it's not just one guy distorting an entire housing market, it's more like 10,000 of them. Once these super rich get their money out of their home country, they park it in safe assets. The most preferred asset is real estate because it's more stable than the volatile assets like stocks. Even if the value of a house crashes, it will never go to zero. In the 2008 crash, houses lost 20% of their value. So if you put $1 million in, you would still get around 800,000 back. Even if the house itself gets blown up or washed away by a hurricane, and you don't have the insurance, the land is still there and land will always be worth something. With stocks, there are no such guarantees. Invest in the wrong company, and you could be zeroed out. This is why real estate is considered a safe haven asset. But this safe haven status encourages people with too much money to park it in real estate and in hot local markets. They can easily crowd out the rest of us. Global cities like New York, London, and Vancouver have become so unaffordable precisely because of this. When Vladimir Billionarov is desperately trying to hide all of his money from Putin, he doesn't care how things cost. He just wants to stash away as much of it as he can for his kids, in case he accidentally falls out of a window. The lawyers and real estate agents he's using to do this know that as well. And because real estate agents get paid on commission, they have an incentive to buy their client the most expensive property available. Once all the castles and mansions have been bought up, these guys start buying up regular houses and homes and apartments as rental properties. Because of how we shot ourselves in the foot by basically banning all new construction, the inflow of money just makes the existing homes more unaffordable. People with more money moving into a neighborhood should be a good thing. But because of artificial scarcity, when these guys move in, everyone else is forced out. So, how do we deal with this problem? In South Park, once the city people get too much, the mayor declares war on real estate agents.
I'm declaring open season on real estate agents.
South Park Realty Group is gone after all the agents snap their spines leaning back too much. And Carmen quits after his mom quits her job to focus on him, which is what he wanted all along.
And you won't get any other job?
No!
And your only job will be me?
Yes, Eric! Yes!
The city people run away and South Park is affordable again. Well, not for the Cartmans. They have to move into the hot dog because Leanne lost her job, and it turns out Cartman didn't make any money because none of his deals closed. He drove up the market too much. The city people left and everything fell apart. Let's look at those 200 square foot of pure luxury we were promised.
Weak. I live in a hot dog.
In another episode, the city part of town, South Park proposes another solution. Just wait them out. In this episode, the city redevelops downtown South Park and calls it Sodo Sopa in order to attract Whole Foods. Sodo Sopa is South Park's art and entertainment district, and for a while it's hot and hip and everybody wants to go there. It's the best place in town. But at the end of the episode, we see that Whole Foods opened its store in that old part of town. And this part becomes its new it place. Sodo Sopa is quickly abandoned and the shiny new buildings start collapsing from neglect. But we can't hope for such simple solutions in the real world. We can't scare away the city people, the investment companies, and the foreign millionaires that easily. And we can't wait them out. And we can't shoot real estate agents either. We need to do way more than that. Take more of an interest in local issues. Boomers got their way because they vote. Zoomers don't. And in the rare event that they vote, it's in national elections. Only 15% of Americans bother to vote in local elections. Compare that to the 66% who vote in presidential elections. The thing that affects our lives most are happening on the local level. Zoning, neighborhood prevention laws, and all this other housing policy stuff is determined on the local level. Half my friends don't even know who our mayor is, and only one of them knows our local alderman. Though to be honest, neither did I. I had to Google the guy. This is the problem. We never pay attention to local politics. The internet and the news cycle have us obsessing over national and global issues, while conveniently forgetting that we are getting screwed over by the guys just 3 miles away in City Hall. If we all take more of an interest in local politics, maybe we can make a difference. City council races may not be as interesting as a Trump assassination or the Israel-Hamas war, but they are the ones that determine which side of town you live on and how much you pay. Imagine a world where you don't have to join a waitlist for an apartment. A world where you don't need a credit check and 1,000 references just to rent a broom closet. A world where your landlord doesn't take half your paycheck. A world where you can actually own a home. That world is possible if we build more houses.